Welcome here to this episode of the Divine Council Worldview Project. We have two special guests, maybe two of the most special guests that you can have, because these two people were two of Mike's favorite people on this planet, without question. We have Fern and Audrey with us today. How are you ladies doing today?
We're doing really good. Thanks for having us, Rich and Mel.
Yeah, so glad to do it.
Thank you for inviting us.
So glad to do it. I mean, without question, you were two of Mike's favorite people. And, you know, I guess I can say it takes one to know one, but having spent as much time around him and with you guys and in all the conversations that I had, we would discuss your work a great deal because we believe that a great deal of the world is suffering from one level of trauma to another, you know, some far worse than others, but some, you know, maybe not, but everybody does. As we talk about, you know, everyone disassociates to some degree for any reason. We would talk about it a great deal to help us in our, you know, goal of, you know, discipleship, you know, of bringing people to Christ and helping them understand his love and his work. I would say that the first time I met Fern and Audrey was in October. It'll be 8 years this October when we had a meeting in Pennsylvania, which was the small group of people that got together to figure out what Mike was going to do, how he was going to go forward, how we can all, you know, work together to accomplish the task of bringing this work that we've all benefited so much from to a lot of other people and what everybody was doing. It was great. I had a great weekend spending time with you guys. You guys remember that weekend?
Sure do. Yes, that was a good time.
Yeah, that was a great
really
time. I enjoyed that a great deal. It was awesome. I've been able to spend some other time with them, which we'll go into in a little bit. But for the sake of this audience, because I don't know who's here from where and how they might not know you guys at all. Why don't you guys talk about what it is that you do? Or first of all, let's talk about how you met Mike or how you came to find Mike's work.
Well, that was years ago, and actually 2009. One of our survivor folks that we were working with sent us his manuscript, The Myth That Is True.
Yes.
And she said, "You've got to read this. This guy gets it." So I read The Myth That Was True. I shared it with Audrey. And we looked at each other and said, we need to get this man here. And we asked him and invited him in 2010 to come and do a seminar. And we were divinely ruined ever since. That was the start. It was his first time he ever offered and presented the Divine Council worldview to a lay audience. And we had about 40 people there, and most of them were survivors. And were supporters of survivors, you know, the support people for survivors. And it was well received. And then every year after that, for 7 years, he came in the fall, sat in our living room, and for 3 days, he would teach us and teach us and teach us. It was kind of open forum, question, and it transformed the way we did ministry.
Yeah. And, you know, one of the things I do remind people on this program is that I found Mike's work in 2010 and I first met him in 2013. The reason, you know, one of the reasons that these ladies were so important to him is because they were some of the only people inviting him to do any of this. Mike was not being invited anywhere to do anything, to even conspiracy conferences, congregations. None of that was being offered to Mike as of 2013. And they did, and they brought him, and it really benefited him to do so, to share those things, to hear those questions, to learn how people are thinking about it when it comes to it. So I know that all of us owe you guys a debt of gratitude for doing that, because of what it allowed Mike to bring to the rest of us through those conversations. So, you know, thank you so much for that.
Yeah, and I want a small correction of what Fern said, because it was 2007 or 2008, because I remember exactly where I was reading The Myth That Is True when it all made sense to me. And while all my kids were asleep and I was laying in bed, and I had this moment of just understanding of the divine council worldview and the impact it has for us as human imagers.
Yeah. And the myth that was true is absolutely one of the best things that it was ever created. I mean, love the unseen realm and everything, but where it came from was that book. And that's what I read back in 2010 and absolutely just shattered my understanding, because it filled in so many things and brought so much, in some ways, justification for not jumping onto other bandwagons and still believing in the supernatural world and all that it was. Because remember, from the age of 16 to 20, I took nothing but LSD and was seeking out these divine beings. You know what I mean? That was my goal, to be able to get into that. So I knew that they were there, and having been denied so much within our culture, but to have him bring that out, I mean, it was great. I mean, I used to print chapters off from that and hand it to people, because, when you printed it out, it was, like a ream of paper. To do so.
Yeah, Rich, I might be jumping ahead, but I want to jump in here quick, because what you just said was key in my relationship with Mike. How you said, like, you did LSD, anything to get to that spiritual realm. We're wired for that, because we long for our Heavenly Father, for, who is He? And for me, mine went into, being super spiritual in the NAR. I didn't even know those words. We can talk about that later, but yours herniated into, LSD. Let's go into that world. And mine herniated into the super spirituality. Let me understand deliverance. Let me understand the demons. Let me understand the hierarchy of the celestial realm. And when I read the myth that's true, I'm like, it's so much more simple. It belongs to Him. And I'm holding my hand up in the air like it belongs to the Heavenly Father who lives in the skies. It's not something I need to manage, own, or map out. And that's what the myth that is true did. It that's why it's for everybody, because everyone has this. Then they're like, it herniates. Anyway.
Yeah, I told Mike, I was
and
like,
Mike had it right here. That stage right with your heart, right with your faith.
Yeah, the first dinner I told him, I was like, your work frees us from so many of the systems that have been laid upon us. I was like, it frees us from it, because it's not a system within itself. That's not what He did. It was the work that freed us from those things, to be able to see God as He is and His great love for us and our place within it, because that's what we're looking for. I know that's what I was looking for. I know that one time when we did that conference in Spokane, we were doing a Q&A. And someone in the audience asked, what kind of people do these supernatural beings get to work for them? And without even question, he said, people like Rich. And everyone laughed. And he was like, no, I'm very serious, because I just shared my testimony. And it was like, this guy right here, whose desire for truth, who sees slavery, and who wants to free people from it. I mean, that could have went in the absolute worst direction if I would have gotten into with these gods. They would have just taken all my gifts and desires and used them for their purpose of dehumanization, to destroy, to crush people in those ways, rather than the night I was going to kill somebody, having God Himself save me. And all those three things were still true. There is truth, and He was it. People are enslaved, and they can be freed. And instead of doing it the way of violence, you do it the way of love, which was always going to be a more difficult path for me. The literal first thing that God ever said to me the night I got saved was, my kingdom is not won through violence. Because He knew that, like, my whole time from 16 to 20, my desire was to physically destroy so much in this world, to give people an opportunity, because I always saw the enemy as something more like, people and men and these systems and things that need to get broken down. And God was like, no, that's not it. That's not it. It is love.
Right. Rich, earlier you mentioned about Mike's, Mike didn't have a system. He just had the love of God and where we fit in it. That's really important. We need to pause on that. We have our place right here. He made the place for us. And in all of the other systems, and I'm just speaking as well as what I came out of, in that theology I came out of the NAR, I had to earn and I had to work it to have a place in it. It's like, oh yeah, you've got to get there. But you're absolutely right. What Mike did was just showed, here it is, and here's your place in him. And it's in here. It was beautiful. You're absolutely right.
Absolutely. Okay. Now, you guys also, I guess we should say here a little bit that you were both written about in the Facade and The Portent. And we're all bummed that the third book didn't get to come out, because that would have been fun. I would have loved to have seen that, but they were two incredible books. And I remember when I first met Mike, The Portent hadn't yet come out. And so I would ask him questions and he would just be like, you got to wait till the book comes out. I was like, man, you are frustrating me right now, brother. Cause like, I want to hear it. Yeah. But in times past, you guys, tell me about like what you've seen in like the character Sabi, you know what I mean? What, you guys know that character that I'm talking about, right? Yeah. Right. Can you tell me like what, the importance of kind of that character or,
Yeah. Yeah, I have to tell you, Sabi for me was the reality of what I had tried to stay away from all my life. My weaknesses, my inadequacies, my limitations. And that was just looked upon as just not enough for God and what he's called me to do. And what Sabi did, and I hope I don't do any kind of, ruin the book for those who haven't read it. But what Sabi did, and what Mike did with that character, was showed the reality of what God did in human beings, not even looking at any weaknesses, any limitations, any handicap, nothing. And the fullness of God was in him. And he carried that through that whole novel, and just taking that character and have that character go up against intelligent evil, a watcher, and just without the Sabi's character had no strength, no physical strength. He was on a respirator, but in that place, it is that character that stood up against, sitting in the power of efficacy of the cross, and stopped hell against them all. When I saw that in that book, and I thought, Mike gets it. There is something so profound. We see that in our office, ministering to people. That was not what I was taught. But Mike did a whole picture of what that was and what it looks like for the kingdom of heaven as a whole to come against the powers of darkness. It's in Christ. It's not in anything of our strength.
Yeah,
he did a beautiful.
We actually show that to a lot of support people. That particular passage in the that chapter of where Sabi's going against Colonel Ferguson, to show them this is what it really, spiritual warfare really is. It's staying in Christ's love.
As opposed to casting.
This whole book is actually the reason why I actually reached out to Mike. It's the reason I met Mike, is because after reading this book, and I didn't know that you guys were real people, but I reached out to Mike, and I don't know how I got his email somehow. And I just said, hey, that McLott thing, that McLott group, yeah, you should do that. Like that we should make that happen somehow. Are you doing it? So he kind of reached out back to me, and we kind of like vetted each other for a little bit, or he vetted me rather. Yeah. And then he told me later, he's like, yeah, Fern and Audrey, they're real people. I was like, what? He goes, yeah, they're real people. And he started telling me your story. And I was like, so it is a thing. I was like, yes, man, we got to do this, And I guess that's what happened in that weekend in Pennsylvania 8 years ago. So it's cool. And I guess I hadn't really thought about this, but it's kind of like, I think the listeners should also seek out their own Miklot group. They should seek out their, like, some sort of like tribe of people that are like diverse in experience and thought and spiritual gifting and skill set. You know, it's kind of like how we all try to be different parts of the body. You know, that's the one thing I noticed in that book is like everybody was a different part of the body. You know, there was no character in that book that I'm like, you know what, they're a little bit duplicative. You know, we can get rid of them. Everybody had their role, just like Sabi did too. And for a while I was thinking, what's this? I remember thinking kind of like, I wasn't catching on to it like you guys were earlier. So now I want to go back and kind of reread through it. Because at first I was like, well, I don't get why this guy's here. I mean, I know there's a purpose, but yeah, it's so deep in the way you explain it. I really appreciate that.
I believe it's chapter 42 or 43 is what we're referring to.
Many of times in these congregations, they're not trying to see the unique nature in each person and help them grow towards that and what God has created them to be. They're trying to make everyone be the same, listen to the same, do the same, everything the same, rather than be who you are and allowing you to fulfill your purpose. I think that's probably, there's a lot of things I'm grateful for Mike for, you know what I mean? To be his best friend. But Mike never wanted me to be anybody but myself because I wasn't Mike and he was not me. He always wanted me to do what I needed to do to accomplish the task that we were committed together in, to getting all of these things out there. And I never felt that from him. That was probably one of the best parts of being his partner, his co-laborer, is that he wasn't trying to make me someone that I wasn't. He wanted to see me live the fullness of who God had created me to be, to find that. And that's what we should be doing in our groups, because everybody is so unique. I mean, God really did create unique creatures. Not one of us has had the same life, no matter if I know we have common union over many different, things that have happened in our life. Me and Mike love baseball, our dads, all kinds of things like this, but God uses all those things to accomplish his purpose. And when I see, some of the greatest people I've ever met are the people that have been through that trauma-based mind control, who have been through those things and overcome it because of the work that they're capable of doing and the people that they're capable of meeting through it. I'll share this one story real quick. I went when I was in my early 20s, I went and helped this church plant in Berkeley, California. And I was doing stuff on the streets. I was doing stuff everywhere, different kinds of work, meeting people, talking to people. It's, what I love to do. There was a couple in there that said, Rich, we've been watching you, for the last 6 months. So they said, we would like you to come over to our house and we want to share our testimony with you. These people were about 6 or 7 years older than me. They were early 30s, both of these people were actually lawyers, big lawyers. And I got over to their house and they started telling me how they were schizophrenics, that 5 years prior to that, they had an episode where they climbed up on an army base in San Diego and almost got shot. And, their whole life went, like that. I mean, and it was amazing because you would have never have known. You would have never have known that they were in that place because of how really amazing they were just, handling their business at church, in our relationships and things like that. But I mean, I'll tell you what, though, we find each other. I'm one of them, like without question. I'm not like I'm one of them. I have survived. I have made it through these things. And when you're in a group like that, and you find them, they're in there and they were remarkable people, caring, giving, loving. Anytime I had something, I was like, look, I don't have this extra $300 to buy these things that I need, not personal, but for the work that we're doing out here, they were always there to do it. Always just great people. And I always feel like that's some of the, would you guys agree that many of the people that you guys have met are incredible?
I have to tell you the story. When I was about 40 years old, I was signed up to go for a master's degree into a doctoral program. And I was coming home from the interview for the application interview. And on the way home, the Lord said to me, you're not going. I'm going to train you in the trenches. And he said, because the people that have had their mind controlled by others, these folks, these survivors, have the gifts and the skill sets of what is needed for what's coming to the body of Christ. And you need to help them set their minds free. And you're going to learn in the trenches. So I know the value. These are minds that need to be able to think and to be set free from the control and the programming and conditioning from little children on. They didn't have a chance to think, but these are our thinkers. The body of Christ needs them. They should not be marginalized like they are, and even put to the side and say, well, we can help these people. We can't help these people. The Lord specifically told me over 25 years ago, this is who they are. We need.
Well, I guess we need to introduce the
Audrey here.
We need to introduce the audience, because a lot of the audience doesn't know what Fern and Audrey do. So kind of give us kind of a high level overview of what you guys do for people, like the counseling service that you guys do for people.
So we work with people who have survived trauma-based mind control, and I will give you our definition of that, because everybody goes, woo, 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 what is that? But our definition is repetitive trauma and abuse a person endures that causes him or her to be submissive to another in their thoughts, will, and choices. And these are adults that have survived severe trauma as children. So that definition covers a lot.
Yeah.
Audrey, can you explain and just walk it through for the audience? When we meet with someone the first time, you do a narrative that you explain the dynamic of that from a child's point of view. Can you take time and do that for us?
I can. Over audio, it's going to be a little difficult, but I will do it. So if you have a little child and bad things are happening to that child, and I have my hands over my head like I'm confused, and your body's getting hurt, and when a child can't make sense out of what's happening, their mind can't process it. So the brain automatically separates it out, so that I have one of my hands up as the child who doesn't know, so she can go to school and learn, because we cannot learn when we're overwhelmed with emotions. And then I have my other hand pulled farther away, and that's the little girl who lives through the bad. She's not bad, she lived through it. And they're completely separate, because remember, no one helped the child process the trauma and the unprocessed emotions from it. So these have to stay separated, because this child's living in trauma constantly. And as the child grows, they're separate. And there's another part of who we are. We're going to call that protection. We all have this. And so protection stands in the middle of these two and keeps them separated. So there's not know, and then we have emotion, and protection's in the middle. Now, I'll give you an example. This is, every human being has this God-given defense mechanism. If I was driving in my car on the highway, and a tractor trailer comes into my lane and pushes me off the road. Now, I was in function. I'm functioning here. Nothing's going on. And now I just went into fear and terror because I'm getting run off the road. So my other hand's now in front of everything. And so now we all do this. And so protection will step in and separate everything out. And maybe I'll go, "You stupid driver." Anger is protection. Now, we do this all day long as human beings, but most of the time people do not know why they're doing it. For a child who lived through severe trauma, this dynamic of being human is what we call it. These positions of where we are in function, protection, and emotion are shifting constantly during the day with the activities we encounter with other people or events. When someone who survives severe trauma, this is all biggie sized, and they live out of these places of defense, and they don't know why, and they're stuck in trauma and fear and terror.
And that place of defense is dissociation. It's not disassociation, because if something's associated, then they were together. They never were together. They're dissociated. So that's that buzzing out, not remembering, amnesic walls. Some of you may know it as multiple personality, but in mental health, it's known as dissociative identity disorder, DID. We look at it, instead of calling it dissociative identity disorder, we say that the child who wanted to live and was overwhelmed in intolerable trauma defended themselves in dissociation, DID, defended in dissociation. It's not a disorder.
That's amazing.
Yeah, because it's part of who they are.
Can I ask you guys another, maybe something that even more people will relate to? And if I'm wrong, tell me I'm wrong. Is there an element of dissociation? And this is not a danger element, but it's kind of like when you're driving and you're driving on a long, long trip and suddenly you arrive. And like when you kind of arrive, you're like, man, I don't even know how I got here. I don't remember the past, 45 minutes. You just kind of like you've been on cruise control. You've had, I guess, function has been doing its thing, but you've kind of been back in your brain doing other things, processing other thoughts and stuff. Is that kind of like a soft element of dissociation of some sort?
Mel, you did a good job. Dissociation is on a continuum, and that definitely is on the continuum of dissociation. The DID would be number 10. I would say, depending on how far back in your head you were like 4, 5, or 6.
Yeah, okay, I got you. Yeah, so DID is just the very extreme version of it.
Exactly. Yep. The child had to stay there and not come out.
And each of these personalities that's created are a valid part of that person, correct? Like it is who they are. These absolutely, because you hear a lot of people like,
we are not.
I was gonna say, you hear people talk about like when people get healed, like regarding DID, is that the rest of that person will all merge and become one, and that's like what healing is. And yet that's not reality, right? Each of these ones that was made is valid to survive for what they were enduring. And
so we use the term a part of a person because everyone has different parts of themselves. I'm, wear my soccer mom hat and wear my, work hat, all of those things. So the definition we have for a part of a person rather than personalities, there you go. A part is an organized, integrated neural network pathway of thought and mood. So that organized, integrated neural network pathway of thought and mood, what we would say as integration is they would come out of the back of their limbic brain of trauma and come forward into the prefrontal cortex, so they're not in torment and terror anymore.
So the integration is learning how to recreate neural pathways outside of what has been conditioned. Pavlov's conditioning is a part of this very heavily. And so when you stay just in that neural circuitry, you're in that conditioning, but you can make a different pathway to come up into the frontal lobe and to be here and not just remember the trauma of the 5-year-old or the 8-year-old or the and
Fern mentioned Pavlov's dog, and she usually tells this, but there's a part of the story of that with Pavlov's dog. He would ding the bell, and the dog would salivate, and the dog was conditioned to do that. But they never tell the rest of the story. That when the owners returned to their dogs, the love connection between the owner and the dog, all that conditioning fell off of the dog. It no longer worked. Love stopped conditioning.
Amen to that. That's awesome.
I want you to think about that. You're in the lab, the dog's being researched on, salivating, ding, ding, salivating. The owner comes in, the dog turns and sees does not care about the lab technician. All is there that sees the owner, and the love of that dog does not respond to the lab tech, but to the owner and of love. Think about that.
That's amazing.
That's what we're talking about.
That is amazing.
We have to give them the opportunity. We have to give everyone the opportunity to be distracted from the lab technician, to see the love of the Father.
And you know what Mike did is he explained all of that, where God wanted a family. And so he had a family that he would say that all the other gods, they had those other groups of people, but his love towards his chosen people would draw them to him. It's the same principle.
It really is.
That's so good. The analogy of the dog is so good too. I've had dogs in my life. I've never been like the primary dog owner. I guess, and some people may not like me for that, but I've always been just more like people focused, and I only have so much like attention span and brain capacity. And I would rather expend that, for me, at least for me, I want to expend that on people. And because for me, a dog is like a perpetual 2-year-old. But having these dogs, and not one, like one mine, it didn't biologically me, so I don't care anyway. So having this dog and caring for, and this one dog that I had was just so dumb. And it was like a purebred, and it was supposed to be cute, but it was just the dumbest dog. And, but I remember so many times interacting with it, thinking, this has got to be how the Father sometimes sees us. Like he is just like light years beyond, more intelligent. The gap between like me and that dog is like light years longer from God to me. And it's like, as stupid as I look at this dog and think this dog is, like, God is infinitely beyond that and still loves me. And so there were times that I would look at that dog and think, man, I'm infinitely dumber than this dog. And yet God still loves me and still comes after me, regardless of the stupid things that I do. And so that dog is, I think his stupidity was like it was just like a daily lesson for me, going and cleaning up its messes, taking care of him when he couldn't take care of himself, So I like your dog analogy.
Yeah. And you guys met, what was it, about 20 years ago? Were you not that for Audrey, Fern? That love? Like that, person 20 years ago that she was able to come and see? I mean, I don't know, if you guys would share it all on that or talk about that. I mean, but it's been 20 years, right? Mm-hmm. Since you guys met?
Yeah, it's just over 20 years. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I was married to a very abusive man, and I had 6 children, and I needed to get away from him. And I told him that I was leaving him because he was assaulting me when I was asleep. And so he, in his desperation, called the pastor of our church. My ex-husband was a worship leader at the church. And the pastor gave my ex-husband Fern's phone number. So he had called, and she had time the very next day. Lucky me, right? And then it was actually, he had gotten a babysitter for the kids and everything. And so the next morning when I woke up, he told me, I talked to this really nice lady, and she agreed to meet us. And I was like, anyone he's taking me to, probably in on it. So she was meeting at her home at the time, and I refused to get out of the car when we got there. And I always make fun of her when we do this, but she came to the door and she said, "You can come in whenever you want." That's exactly what it sounded like to me. And so I did come in, and we were there for 3 hours, and I said not a single word. He blamed everything on me, that I had been molested as a child, and it would all be better if I just was a better wife. And so I didn't say anything because I didn't know her or trust her. In the process of that, she asked 2 questions, which I think she probably would never ask present day, but she did to me.
Mm-hmm. I said, do you dissociate?
And I looked straight out the window. I didn't even look at her.
And do you have body memories?
And I did the same thing. I didn't answer her.
I want you to know those are really stupid questions. Okay. Again, I don't know why I asked them, but she showed me how she could dissociate. And I don't even know why I asked the body memory one. That was silly. Go ahead, Audrey.
So at the end, she said, well, I think I can help you both, but I'd like to see you separately. And I was like, wait, what? No one's ever done that.
Yeah, that's important.
So I prayed a prayer. Can I just?
Yeah.
And the prayer I prayed was, Dear Lord Jesus, I ask you that you would gather the beautiful bouquet of Audrey and hold them all until we find them all.
And look where you are 20 years later.
And we are.
Amen.
And
it's
so,
a beautiful thing.
You know, she was the only one who stood in the community with to help me get free from him. He was a very terrifying person for most people.
So I just want you to know, I do a really excellent job with Audrey's help, working with those, who are trauma-based mind control. Not so well with marriage counseling because I helped her get a divorce. So TBMC is good. Don't come to me for more.
Well, and there's something I've been learning kind of like lately on my own is that, and this is kind of unfortunate, but ministry draws some interesting personalities. Like there's a lot of like narcissistic, and I don't mean that in the flippant, the over usage sense of the term that we're kind of doing it nowadays, but like legitimate narcissism, clinical narcissism, like gets a lot of those type people get drawn to ministry. I think just because of the focus that it brings on them, and then the control that they kind of can implement with just using the qualities of their personality. So it's, unfortunate, that you had to endure that. And it's sad when it comes out of the church, it's out of this, supposed body. I can't judge that guy now. I don't know where he's at spiritually now, but.
Yeah, I think it was a shock for people. He's very charismatic. And so he, talk to anybody, but I mean, it is, happens all the time though. We meet a lot of people. It's just, we want to be there. And that's, there's so many levels that it hits. There's spiritual abuse, there's, maybe there's physical, sexual, emotional, mental, all under the name of God, which is horrendous.
Mm-hmm.
It is.
And so something we were talking about like before the show, how do you guys discern between when you're dealing with a person that has dissociated personalities versus, I think everyone, again, the church, we commonly think of, well, there must be some kind of demonic possession. How do we, is there a way to kind of tell what you're dealing with?
I think there is, but I want to tell a story on my journey on learning how to discern the difference and what my bias is at this stage after almost 30 years of ministry. So I was working with a gal who had folks inside, had little ones inside and big ones inside. She was a survivor of satanic ritual abuse as well as MK Ultra. And we were in a ministry session, a ministry time. And I want you to imagine a big body. The person's in front of me. They're an adult. There's an adult body in front of me. And a little child is talking to me. And the little child is explaining about some abuse. And then there is an overlay, a mindset of just taunting me. And that mindset of taunting me, my response to that taunting is I'm getting angry and I want to shut it down. Now, my background at this point, this was over.
And I'm sorry, Fern, do you mean something taunting you is like another voice coming out of the little, like the adult is first, like they're talking like a little child, but then the adult starts talking like another person?
Yes, a deeper, she's mine.
Kind of an intelligent evil.
You can't do anything about this. Yes, I would call it an intelligent evil. People would call it demonic presence. I'm calling it intelligent evil. And so I am getting agitated at this taunting. I want to just shut this down. Now, my background is I grew up in the NAR, in the New Apostolic Reformation, in the charismatic movement. I didn't know it was the New Apostolic Reformation ideology. Mike was the one that told me that. So as a good prayer minister, I'm sitting with a person who has a history of satanic ritual abuse with my holy water and everything I need for deliverance. So this taunting starts, she's mine, you can't have her. And I'm getting more and more agitated. And I have a little bit of holy water, not a lot. And I pick up the cup and I just hurl the water at the adult body. It's like time stopped. It was like the $6 Million Man. Bump, 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 bump. I saw the water go across and it just splashes on the adult body. The little child comes out and is afraid of me and says, "Why did you do that? The people that hurted me did that." She was washboarded as part of the trauma programming in the cult. Mm. And so the entity that was taunting at me set me up. At my anger at the entity set me up to do to the little girl exactly what was done to her by the original bad people.
You walked right into it.
And I did. I was now the perpetrator. Now what do? I'm the prayer minister. And so I, from that moment on, I always stayed with the heart of the person in front of me. And I did not let the taunting of the demonic in any way. So what happens now when there's a taunting of the demonic? Yep, the voice changes, the atmosphere in the room changes. Yeah, I can tell you it's demonic. It's an intelligent evil. I do not go up out of, do you remember my words? My words where I got really agitated and irritated at this taunting. That's my own fear, my own protection, my own anger. And when I use my own anger to subdue intelligent evil, I'm on their turf.
You'll lose every time.
You'll lose every time. So now what I do after I met Mike, when I feel that agitation, and it still happens, I know that that is intelligent evil, an evil watcher, a demon, whatever you want to call it. And I sit back in my chair literally, and I go down into my heart, and I say to myself, my name is written in the Lamb's Book of Life. And it's from that place that I continue to talk to the heart of the person in front of me and say, can you hear that? Can you feel that? That's not you. It never was you. And because I stay in love, this demonic entity needs to leave. Sabi, when I read that about Sabi, I'm like, Mike knows. And that's what we do.
Because the other part of that.
So I'd rather err staying with the heart of the person. And then if it continues, and then that's when I say exactly what Sabi did. The Lord rebuke your watcher. The Lord rebuke you. Done.
And therein lies some of the issues.
So instead of trying.
No, go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead.
So lies some of the problem with like deliverance stuff and things like that. Because when these people they're just starting to get out, come out. You know what I mean? The screaming and the hollering and the casting is just abusing that person who was already suffering in the first place and reached out for help. And all of a sudden they're just getting hammered over and over again. And that's good.
Now, if there is multiplicity there, which is 90% of the time there is, that little child is dropping into shame because they're really bad because someone's yelling at them. You are spiritually abusing that human being in front of you. You are further dehumanizing that human being in front of you. I will never do that. I used to years and years ago. I'm not going to do that.
Yeah. I think it's interesting. Like when you look at the instances where like in the Bible where demons were cast out, it never really says anything about yelling. There's almost like no violence whatsoever. Now, granted, Jesus is on a whole nother level than everybody else, because he's got all authority. He just says it and it's done. I'm thinking about the story in Mark 9 where like the disciples try and call the guy, the deaf and mute boy out. And then Jesus walks over and he casts it out, and the disciples come back later and they say, "Hey, we were trying to do it and it wouldn't come out." And then some versions of the Bible say, "Well, this one only comes out with prayer." Some versions say prayer and fasting. But I distinctly don't remember there being any kind of like verbal confrontation. It's just kind of a command. A command to come out. But then I know like when you use the phrase, the Lord rebuke you, that's kind of when, what was it, Michael and Lucifer were contending over Moses' body, and he said, the Lord rebuke you, Mm-hmm. And maybe we're getting too into the weeds on this part, but do you have a sense when it's like kind of you're dealing with like maybe watcher type power versus maybe these disembodied the disembodied spirits, demonic spirits? Do you have any sense of the difference?
It's rare that we would come across demons, lower level demons, but definitely intelligent evil watchers. We would, and it's really more of a mindset that's over the person, not in them. They're not in them.
Okay.
It's oppressive over them, in a mindset of elitism, the pride that they're just going to be better than anyone else. That's what it is. A smugness. That's what we would say. That is not a part of that person.
And that's not lower level. That's intelligent
right.
evil. And that's the other thing that Mike did a great job in his in The Portent. It was a little bit there in just God, but he really Mike did a great job in The Portent, lining out what intelligent evil looks like with Colonel Ferguson. It's just that taunting. It wasn't that you weren't allowed to think. It wasn't that you weren't that you were spooked. It was more that your flowing of thoughts he would take, and he said, it doesn't matter which way you go. We'll take that and we'll bend that against yourself. If you look at that, it's very sinister. That is more of what we see. Let them think, but they're going to go in a circle and they're going to circle back against themselves. They're going to be dehumanized. And that dehumanization is the intelligent evil.
And
what
so,
does the love look like that frees? Go ahead.
Oh, go ahead. That's a good answer. Good question.
So, what does the love look like that helps free people from these things?
So if that would happen in with a person there and that smugness, you can't have her, and this is she's mine, like that. Well, what would happen is we would talk to the heart of the person, not that entity at all, and stay in love in that person towards that person, and then it always the person will be there, and we can still have both the intelligent evil and that person there, but we will talk about, can you feel that's different than you? That's not your heart. And they can start, I thought that was me. I didn't know that it wasn't me, but I can feel that's different from me. And that's what we do. We help them just do mechanism to understand what is them and what is not them.
Right. Because in the trauma, they couldn't tell the difference. Think about it. If you're being hurt as a child, sensorily overloaded with physical trauma, sound, sensory trauma, light trauma, and you're a kid, you don't know what's happening. You don't even know why they're doing this to you. They can't differentiate anything. They just fold into the protection. We help them pause and feel their heart.
And then it's an easy choice. Do you want that around you? No, of course I don't. Well, they can't stay.
Is there some way for those people to dissolve that aspect of them? Does it sounds so strange. I think of like computers and how we format hard drives, and we can partition a hard drive. Like, I can take a hard drive and I can say, this half of the hard drive it's going to be using Linux operating system, and this half is going to be using Windows operating system. Is there some way to kind of say, I'm going to dissolve the Windows and I'm going to bring it all back under the Linux operating system? Is there some way of doing that?
It's more like if you pictured a person and put a blanket over top of them, completely over their head, it's hanging down to the ground. And we would say that blanket over them is the oppression of intelligent evil. And they can just make a decision they don't want that, and that has to leave. Mm-hmm. That part is still there without that intelligent evil.
Mm. Mm.
And for the first time in their life, they're feeling their me, their heart, without that blanket. They've never felt that. Can you imagine? I know that most of us haven't lived through that kind of trauma, but there are many, many people who have survived that level of trauma as children. And they don't know what their heart feels like without that level of darkness on it. And we just help them feel that. And that's the other thing that Mike really helped me with the theology and stuff. We talked about, like Rich said earlier, there's no part of a person that goes away. That the heart of there's one heart. And that heart is where Jesus dwells. I think Mike and I, we talked about this a lot, and he wasn't opposed to the idea. There's nothing biblical about it. But I said, Mike, it's as if this mystery of what Paul talks about, the mystery of soul versus spirit. Hebrews said you can't separate it. Only the word of God can. So let it go. Stop separating soul and spirit. And then I said, Mike, do you think this is really, when I say the heart of a person, there's one heart. Do you think this is the mystery? Soul, spirit is where the Spirit of God dwells inside. And this is where we're bringing the people back to find the love of God, this mystery of soul, spirit. And he goes, That could be. And that's just what we're doing. We're bringing them right back here to the mystery of soul, spirit. Feel this. This is what it is to be human. No one can touch this, Hebrews said. No one can separate this.
You know, that reminds me, I was listening to a pastor that was doing some interviews on near-death experiences. And he was talking about all the people that once they crossed over into heaven, they were still themselves. Like they still had the same personality. They still had that. And it's like when they saw their loved ones, they recognized their loved ones, even though the grandmother looked young, but they recognized her by like her soul, like the spirit of who she is, and she still interacted with them. And so I think that's really, really good, because it seems to be we are going to still be like, we're going to carry that into the next life, you know? And I think that's another reason you're hitting on something really important. I think it's because I don't think when we get into the heavenly kingdom past this life, I don't think the job is done. I don't think we're going to be sitting on clouds eating chocolate bonbons all day. There's going to be, God is always, he has something, there's something else to be done. You know, there's something else we're going to be doing, you know? And it's kind of like, we are practicing for the personality, the skill, the person, the qualities that we're going to bring into that next kingdom. And so I think it's really, really important to make the most of this time now, because like, I kind of think of this as game day, because boy, it sure does feel like game day. You know, it's tough. This life is tough. But something real like that kingdom is more real. And apparently it's even more important that I operate and function well here, so that I carry the qualities and that what's the term? It says we're going to judge angels, you know, so obviously we want to judge well, but I've got some words to say to some of those watchers. I certainly do. And, but we're going to be stewards over the next, you know, we're going to be given authority of some sense. And so I want to lead well, because I've been in all kinds of situations where I've been in the military. I've been in a lot of other organizations where there's a very clear hierarchical structure of leading, and I've been led well and I've been led poorly. And when you're led poorly, the impact is just, it's vast. And so I want to lead well. And I think what you guys are talking about is really, really crucial in understanding and helping those people, because I think just the mere fact that intelligent evil would go after those people may signal something about importance of who they are. It's like we need to marginalize these people with a quickness. You know, I don't think it's necessarily just a, you know, unwitting victim. Like, oh, here's some low-hanging fruit. Let's just take this one. I'm sure that happens sometimes, but.
Yeah, almost like the way you were talking about is the intersection of like almost heaven and earth, you know, that symbiotic relationship where God died for our humanity, you know, to redeem the human nature part of us that is being destroyed throughout this whole thing. And it intersects there, right there in the middle, right in that heart where we were supposed to live out of and express those things to experience, you know, God and to have others do so. Because one of the things that I, you know, would say is, me and Mike, when we got together, we had a lot of conversations, you know, to get to know one another. And one of the things that we bonded on is that we never overlooked anyone. Like if God puts someone in our path, we try to then do what we could for that person. I had done it in my life prior, and so had Mike. And I think about that, how important that is, because you never know who anyone is going to be. Like there's I don't know if you could have, but I don't know if 20 years ago when you saw Audrey sitting in that room that you could understand that you guys would be here 20 years later and have done the things that God has blessed you to do to free the people that you have, to help impact so many people, that impact so many people, that impact so many people. How could that have been seen back then? But that's how God sees. That's how Jesus Christ himself sees when he looks down upon us and sees these people. You cannot overlook them. Give them your love, give them your time, and see how they grow, how they come out of that darkness and start to be the light themselves that they so desire to be. Because many of the people that are like this are filled with hearts of mercy. They got just the biggest hearts of mercy, which is what the world needs out there, is people to find those people and do so. And I'll say this about Mike, like, thank God for Drina and his kids that were there for Mike for so long when so few necessarily were. But we, in Mike's life, we gave him that place because we loved him. We allowed him that opportunity to be free himself, and go do all these things in as much courage because we were. So, I mean, obviously, I thank you guys for that because it was huge impact on my life, but we were some of those people to do so. Like, you can't even overlook a scholar, as many of us might want to try sometimes, you can't, but just anybody, you don't do it because God can do incredible things through everyone. And one of the things that we're going to do for eternity is testify to his glory, right? To his greatness, to all that he did. And that's going to be in and through our lives. We're going to see that the day that we're before him, we're going to see that, and our testimonies will be ours. We will be sharing our stories with, all sorts of beings for all of eternity to bring him glory. Because we can say, even though I was nothing, I was someone to God, and God brought me the people that I needed, the love that I needed to be able to go out and share his glory with others. And they were brought, because that love does bring that through it, So yeah, you can't just never overlook anyone, no matter how hard they were. I mean, I remember so many people that I may have met 20, 24 years ago in the park or that were in college are now great people. They weren't back then, but you treat them as though they are, because they are to Christ. He sees them in that way, and you do so. And it could lead to incredible fruit. You guys have bore incredible fruit in the past 20 years that have blessed so many of us. I mean, you blessed me and Mike. I know you blessed Mike because you're his favorite people, but both of us together were able to take that and think about that, especially as we dealt with all these different people. I mean, you guys understand the different kinds of people and their beliefs, from, all the way in the NAR to people who believed they were nothing but murderers and killers, like being able to do that. And that's what love does. The love of God and the love for others is an incredibly powerful thing that transforms. I mean, yeah, fear transforms. It really does. But nothing like love. Nothing like love.
And this is truly like ministering to the least of these, I would say, because this is ministering to people that deal with this. Is probably like, it's like talking to people that say they've been abducted by aliens. Like, no one wants to admit they've been abducted by aliens. And no one wants to say, I've got split personalities. No one wants to say that either. Like, there are going to be people that listen to this that probably deal with this or don't know they deal with it or know who people deal with this. And it's just not talked about, And I mean, I get it, but it is a group of people that I would say they are the least of these, because it's going to be overlooked. And it's often, I mean, I would absolutely be guilty of misattributing it to just be some kind of demonic, aspect. It's just something this is something we talked about earlier at the beginning of the show with you two, is that there is demonic roots to all this stuff, but it's just what they do that gets the person there. Can we, and I don't want to take this through a history lesson, because you mentioned MK Ultra and stuff like, and some people are just going to be like, okay, we just entered like Coast to Coast AM, that's not the show I'm signed up for. But can you kind of like attest a little bit to like, yes, it is real, that happened. I remember you talked about the doctors, and then, 4 different people mentioning the same. I mean, what kind of things gave you some sense of this is credible, that it is this program, that this did happen?
Yeah, because I wanted to believe that it wasn't. I really was very, I just felt everyone needed to pull themselves up by their bootstraps and get over their good selves and, say a prayer and get it fixed. what I started seeing was these are people that try really hard. These are people that never give up. And I had 4 different people in my area come to me for just help. They were probably having like people, just regular problems. They just didn't know if God was real. They had these flashbacks and whatever. And all 4 of them mentioned to me the same Christian psychologist and the same Christian gynecologist in their narrative over my time with them. And here it was that this Christian psychologist and Christian gynecologist were part of doing research on people for mind control. And they did that research in an area state hospital. And I'm sitting there thinking this, I'm crazy for believing them. So I didn't believe them. I just worked with the trauma of it. And then I couldn't, when it was 1, when it was 2, then 3, 4, then I'm like, Lord, what are you showing me? Because I have to put aside my belief system.
And none of those people knew each other.
No, none of them knew each other. And then it started ending up that other prayer ministers that were meeting were mentioning, when we would get together and talk, they were mentioning these Christian psychologists and that they were getting people in Virginia from the, and I'm like, Lord, I don't want this to be true. And so I had a choice. My choice was follow the rabbit trail and expose it all, or help the person in front of me get their mind back. So I chose just to help the person get their mind back and let the narrative be what it is. But we did create a curriculum that helps get their mind back. And we had 400 people go through the curriculum so far. We have a curriculum 1 that tells what it is to be human. And we go through what it is, how humans and how we image God. Real simple, profound. We have, in fact, last September, 40 people went through one cohort, and 85% of those 40 people were licensed mental health professionals. Wow. That's who's taking the course. The second course is how a child built a system. And we take them through, and we show them again and again and again how a child built the system so that they can get ready for working with people who are dissociative and live out of a dissociative system, defended in dissociation. In that course, in the third course that we're working on right now, in the third course, we have one module, I think it has 5 lessons, that we go through the history of mind control through MK Ultra, through the whole historical, and it's not conspiracy theory, it's well documented. And we go through all of that. So I just want to say we tried to do our due diligence, and we hit it in the curriculum about, is this real? Is it not real? But I have to tell you, I've been doing this over 25 years. The people are real. They've been dehumanized by trauma, and their minds have been scrambled. But I have seen the love of God bring them out in that place, that they are functioning well, loving well in the body of Christ. Amen. And so that's what we do. We have shifted. We still meet with people, but we are really focusing on training others to be able to do what we do, because it's not about Fern and Audrey. It's about you walking in the love of God for those who need it in your community. And we have the tools now to help you to do that. And so, again, we are still ministering to trauma-based mind control and survivors. And, but we also have a strong focus on educating and duplicating ourselves.
And you all have done amazing.
Not to be us.
Yeah, you guys have done amazing creating all that, because I can remember a decade ago when we all first met and were talking about it, like none of those things existed. And yet all the time people would contact and be like, where are people that I can go to like you? How can people learn the things that you're doing? Which,
it's just so, kind of, it's just so fringe, no one wants to like address it, Is there some, and I think I already know the answer to this, but is there a different way that you approach a person, let's say that's had let's say like the MK Ultra mind control trauma versus you mentioned satanic ritual abuse. Is there a different way that you approach that? Or it's still, I know it eventually still goes back to love, but is there do you notice, is there a different flavor when you kind of come like approach it when it reveals itself?
The dehumanization of a child or of a human being, the human being responds in the same way. But the beliefs and the constructs in a child's mind is different. So it's kind of like if I asked you, Rich, to draw me a picture of an apple, and I asked you, Mel, to draw me a picture of an apple. It depends on what your bias, your frame of reference is. Mel might draw me a computer with an apple on the back, an Apple computer. You might, so what I'm saying is you have to be creative when you're working with a human being, because how did that child think? What was in that child's world? That's what they built. But the separation and the language of that child, you can help them unpack that. They understand it, but they don't understand. They live it, but they don't understand it. What the child built, the adult lives in. And maybe we can come back and unpack some of that stuff. I know that we've gone pretty long.
Yeah, we should do that as well as, talk about where people can, get the courses and things like that as well as time permits. But yeah, we should definitely do that, as well as like talk about, mind control or in the congregations, in the church,
I would like to do that.
Let's plan on that. We'll make notes for the next time we talk, which won't be too far in the future. But because there is a lot of that, a lot of that control in these systems that are, doing it, just as you guys would talk, just to tell someone, who has dealt with this, that they need to read their Bible more and pray more, that they will create that, person or that, that part of them that will do that, to be obedient, to be accepted and do those things. But I mean,
have more faith.
And everyone is susceptible to that to one degree or another, right? I mean, because we all have the desire to belong. We all want to be a part of it. We all want to know our God and believe that this is the way. And we've been misled many times. We've all probably suffered abuse at the hands of congregations and leaders and things like that. And that will be an important conversation because, like you can see out right now, God, there's like a reckoning. There's a reckoning among many congregations and, the NAR and all these places that God is bringing forth, the abuse that has occurred. And, for me, I know that, I'm very blessed to be able to say this, but I'll help pick up the pieces. I'll find some of those people that are broken from that, have since I started walking with the Lord and seen it. And I'll be glad to do so. I'll be so grateful to do so for anybody to be able to. But this is what is going on, and it should be talked about more, because everyone is just going to call you crazy or crush you down when you start discussing the reality of what the programming we've endured at the hands of the congregation, from these seminaries.
Do you know, Rich, one of the things that we find when people go through our first course, we tell them it's kind of like Mr. Miyagi in that Karate Kid. You're going to say, why am I doing this? White ball, white ball. And one of the modules is on spiritual abuse. And we've had a lot of pastors and a lot of prayer ministers take the course, and they're like, why are we doing that? And I have to tell you, some of them get paused out almost 3 months just on that module in spiritual abuse, because they didn't have the language for what they lived through. And so I just want you to, it's not for the faint-hearted, but it is for everybody to be able to understand what it is to be human and the treasure of being human. And I have to tell you, all of that came out of the beautiful time that we had with Mike Heiser.
Amen.
I'm forever grateful.
Well, we will do this again. We will do, whatever we can, because again, like one of the goals originally for, Mike, when we were talking about all these things, is that when we would go to a place, we'd continue to go and you guys would be able to be there. Because every time we went and spoke to 50, 100 people, there would be 10, 15 people who would be like, hey, where are Fern and Audrey? can we talk to them, and do that? And we still want to see that. We still want to, see that people can find those things when we do. I don't know how we'll do it, but we'll get it done. But thank you guys so much for joining us. I absolutely love you guys. I mean, me and Audrey are obviously, F3s forever, buddies forever, but I thank you. I thank you for your, your love for the Lord, your love for, quote unquote, the least of these, even though many of them can be lawyers or business owners or people that are coming to you. Your love for Mike, was incredibly impactful for all of us. I mean, your guys' love and, what you did for him, inviting him and stuff really did open up more doors for the rest of us. And I'm very grateful for that. I look forward to doing this again. Mel, do you have anything else to say?
Yeah. Do you guys have a website or some way for people to get a hold of you?
Yeah. So, we're at discoveringmelearningcenter.org.
Discoveringmelearningcenter.org. All one word. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. We'll probably put that in our intro.
And if you reach out to us, please add your email address so we can get back to you.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
All right.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, guys.
I know.
Good being with you.
Good seeing you guys again too.